Everyone, I'm Meenakshi. I welcome you all to my event. And first, let me know how many of you have heard of the word programming and how many of you have started learning some programming language. Like, can you all please raise your hand? That's really great. Okay, fine. Now we'll be introducing you to programming and what all about all of it. And at the end of the session, you will come to know more about programming and where it is used and why is it very necessary. So moving
Hello
on.
everyone. Before we start the session, we want you to create an account in HackerRank because we have a few activities planned for you guys. So please do create an account using your college email ID. Okay, so let's get started. Over to Meenakshi.
Yeah. So can
Yeah,
all
let's
of you
put the link to
guess?
the
Yeah,
hacker
one
rank so
minute.
that they can sign up. 1 second, I'll put the link. Requesting each and every one of you to uh, click on this link and get yourself registered. Please use your college email ID for the same.
The
The
contest starts
contest,
at 7:30 p.m. and it lasts for 24 hours. So it consists of very beginner level questions, and we'll be covering most of the concepts in this session.
It's just like the activity we had yesterday.
yeah, we just want you to create the accounts right now so that at the end, as soon as it starts, you guys can get started.
Excuse me, bro. Actually, I've already have an account on HackerRank. Should I create a
Uh,
new account?
yeah, please use your college email ID and create an account.
That's so that
Okay,
we can
sure.
keep track of all of you, your roll numbers and all.
It'll be helpful
Okay,
when we publish the reader report as well.
Yeah.
sure.
So this HackerRank site, right? It'll be helpful for you guys throughout, your coding ventures. You can easily learn. There are many packages that are available on this for free, where you can learn coding, practice problems.
Yeah, it's very beginner friendly, and even the overall design of the platform has made sure that, it's very useful for beginners and easy to start with.
Yeah, and it's right time for you to start with programming, and you can try HackerRank first. It consists of all basic concepts, and it'll also be useful if you want to learn a new programming language. So
Can you guys like raise your hands? How many are done, or just give you a couple minutes so that you guys can quickly sign up and we can proceed with the session unhindered. Please do raise your hands as soon as you complete the sign up process. You must be getting a mail after you sign up to your college email ID.
Done, bro.
Yeah, please do raise your hands. $35. Others, can you quickly do the registration process and raise your hands? Use your college email ID.
though what you're doing right now isn't actually real world industry level programming, this is the starting space for you all. This is where you get to learn the ABCs of actually building super cool apps and, everything that's makes our life really easy.
Yeah, guys. True to the 101 course. I think there are some people with exams today, right? The attendance is 180. We had 200 plus yesterday.
Tomorrow.
Right. It's spread out over the entire week, I guess. Okay, we have 65 hands up. Please do quickly register, guys, so that we can carry on with the session. Do raise your hands after registering. And use your college email IDs to register.
Yeah, it will also be useful, after this throughout. You can practice on your own and attend contests on your own. All company placement sessions and all, when you come to the later years, of course, will be in this platform. So,
Bro, I have one doubt, bro. Is it hackathon is free or paid, bro?
It is free only.
free.
Thank you.
You were talking about general hackathon or
I think
yesterday's
he meant HackerRank platform.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's free.
Okay, thank you, bro.
All right, I think we can start, resume. The others,
Yeah.
please keep, quickly sign up so that by the end of the event, you can quickly start. It's at 7:30. We'll be also be publishing the leaderboard of the top 3 students. So the quicker you start, the quicker you can finish and increase your chances to be on the leaderboard. Yeah, I think we can continue this.
Yeah, sure. So, can you all guess like what is on the screen? Like, can you guess what the first pic is talking about and the relationship between all these things? So, come up with ideas. I wanted to tell what's on the screen exactly. So, what do you think this is? Let me start. This is a game, Minecraft. It's a game, and the next one is what?
Android apps.
Yeah, it is apps, and next you can say like it is a trading, a graphs, and all. So, and this one, as you see, as you know, it's a self-driving car. It's a very advancement in technology which uses
Sensor.
machine learning. Yeah, exactly. It's self-driving cars, and it's all. This one is the medical, medical technology,
AI
and
powered.
yeah, exactly. So, what do all these have in common?
Technology and science
Yeah, exactly. And what do you need to, develop these?
programming.
Computer programming.
We should have program imagination, perfect imagination skills.
Yeah, great. So programming is necessary to develop all these apps or games or be it a web app or anything. It is very much necessary, but it's not a very complex thing as you might think. It is very easy, and we'll start with the basics of programming, what is programming and how it can be used in all these applications and all. So programming is nothing but a process of creating a set of instructions that tells a computer how to perform a task. Like you will be knowing what to do. Like after you see a problem, you will know what to do, but you have to make the computer understand how to process it and how to like understand your language. So that's where programming comes into role. And let's see more about why it is important. Over to Haranya.
So why do you actually need programming? Why do you have to actually learn programming? That's because, Meenakshi told you, she gave you a lot of examples, right? So if you see, just look around you, and if you see some tasks that aren't done by humans, then that would mostly be due to programming. So everything is automated, and computers are the reason for it. Computers can make everything automated and accurate as well. And so we need computers, and in turn, we need programming to make computers do what we want. So we'll have to instruct the computer to do something. Basically, a set of instructions are needed to make a computer do what we need. So how do we frame our instructions? So Meenakshi will tell you now.
Okay, so here we have a maze. in this maze, like if we are human beings and we know how to solve it by just by seeing it and framing up a logic. But how do you make the computer understand how to solve it? So we'll see that. Like here, if you see here's a Mars rover which needs to reach its destination over here, and we have to code like the computer to move 2 steps down and then about 3 or 4 steps to the right and then 2 steps down again and then 4 steps left. So let's see how we have to create an algorithm basically and teach the computer how to solve it, and in turn it will solve it for you. So algorithm is nothing but a process or set of rules to be followed in calculations or other problem solving operations, especially by a computer. For example, if you have a real world problem, then you have to you will be thinking about the solution and you have to make the computer understand that. So for that, we'll be writing something on a pseudocodes. So the program flow basically goes like this. We have to first declare and or assign the variables. Variables are nothing but you can say it as naming a particular to store values, actually to store any data. Variables are used. So first we have to declare a variable in a program and then we have to perform operations on that by giving some algorithm as the coding some algorithm in the computer, and using that operations the computer will be giving us the result. That will be the output. So this is the basic program flow of how it works. And I'm sure that most of you might have worked on Flowgorithm as a part of the PSAT course. So like this is how it goes. Like you have a main, and then we'll have declare a variable num, and you'll get it as an input and output the same number, and you have an end also over here. So you might have heard of the for loops and if else and all.
Yeah, so how do we make computers understand our instructions? So apparently computers can't understand what humans say, but you have to know that technologies are being developed for that as well. But basically to make computers understand what we are saying, we had the need to invent languages that made computers understand. So there are so many languages that have been made for computers. For example, let's say you are switching on your computer and you see your OS running on your computer. So C and C++ are used for operating systems. Let's say you're listening to Spotify and a lot of recommendations come up. Those recommendation systems are done using Python. You must probably be using your browsers now. So websites on your browsers are made using JavaScript. But it is not that only a particular language can be used for a particular task. We have so many languages like these C, C Sharp, C++, Java, Python, JavaScript, and there are so many languages. There are bizarre languages as well, which programmers have created. For example, look at the code here. So it is basically the Hello World program using the language called LOL code. So meaning, yeah, you know what LOL is. So and there is also a language called chicken, which has only the word chicken in it for all the instructions. So there are many languages. The languages list is actually endless.
Yes, guys. To give you an analogy, it's like basically how you have different languages in which you speak, right? You have Tamil, you have English, you have Telugu, you have Hindi. So, but what you speak will not change. Whatever you're going to say in Tamil or Telugu or English, the content is going to remain. Only the way in which you're going to say it is going to differ. The same with computer programming languages as well. So you have to really understand the difference between learning programming and learning programming language here. Learning programming is the entire process, right, of how you are going to think, how you are going to solve the problem. Programming language is just a tool, basically like how you think before what you want to say. If a teacher asks you a question, you think what you want to answer. That is programming. And while answering, you're going to use language to put that across to the other person. That is your programming language. In this case, it's a computer, right? So a computer is primitive. It's just bare metal. It does not have brains like us. So it cannot understand these complex programming, some complex languages like Tamil, Telugu. It needs some special languages, and those are nothing but these programming languages.
It's very much needed here that all of you know this, because we've got many of you asking us questions like, which programming language should I learn for something? which programming language should I learn for something else. But you can actually, if you go about it, you can learn any language for absolutely anything, because as you said, you can convey the same amount of information that you need in either English or in Tamil, depending on the user that you're speaking to. So programming languages are just tools, and programming which is logic and problem solving is what you need to train yourself on. So once you've trained yourself on, say, like one programming language, and found the way to like do problem solving, after that learning other syntax would just be a 15-minute job. So you can keep on adding another programming language to your arsenal within like just 15 minutes.
Exactly. And that is why we have Google for, right? You just search the syntax and you're going to learn that language. And why we are stressing on this point is we have, as Aditi said, right? Again, we've seen a lot of questions on you guys stressing, is coding necessary? Is coding necessary for hackathon? Even yesterday's coding, I think you guys are like getting scared looking at the language. It's just a basic syntax that you can, you know, how you learned English in your LKG, just like that. And it's even simpler. You're just going to learn it from the net, and it is in English. So you're just going to have some syntax that you're going to use. What we stress more on is problem solving. That is not, specific to any particular department or anything. Even you guys know now that CBSE has included programming in the syllabus of students from 6th standard, right? From 6th standard. So it is not something that is only for CSE. It's basically for all people to improve your thinking and your problem solving skills. And doing it on a computer is just that one extra step. Over to Haranya or Meera.
All right, so let's learn some actual programming. So here we have data types, but then before moving into data types, let's take the example Kingfisher. We have a bird and a plane. So we'll have to say the machine what we mean by the name of Kingfisher. And that's how data types are also used. We'll have to let the machine know what data type the variable is of. So before actually learning data types, we'll learn two terms. Those are keywords and variables. So keywords are words that are already reserved and they have a particular meaning already in the language. So Meenakshi told you what variables are. So it has the same meaning what you studied in maths before. Basically, a variable can take any value, but you cannot use the keywords as variable names. So we have bool, int, char, float, double. These are the fundamental basic data types in almost any language. We'll learn more about it in the next slide.
So these are the primitive data types used in programming. Bool is nothing but it returns true or false. Like if we declare a variable result, then bool is nothing but assigns a value true or false to it. So it has only two outputs. It can store two types of values. Whereas int is ranges from all the like integers, the normal numbers. You can store it on int. It has a storage space of 2 or 4 bytes. Like right now, we're not worried much about what these bytes mean. It's just a storage space. And here is an example how we can declare an integer variable. So here we have assigning a value 2 to the variable in a, and this variable a has the data type int. So this is how we declare a variable in C++ and all. But for Python, it's different. We'll be covering that later as well. Char data type stores a character, and like for example alphabets or symbols or numbers or whatever be it, and it has a least storage byte of 1 byte. So because it just stores one particular character. And then we have float, because in int we can't deal with decimal values, right? So for using decimal values in a program, we have to, yeah, go ahead. Did someone have any doubt? Okay, fine. So float is used to
please do
store...
mute your self, guys, and I think you can lower your hands also. Later on, if you have doubts, you can raise your hands. Please do lower your hands now. Sorry to interrupt, Meenakshi.
Yeah, it's okay. So float is data type which is used to store the decimal values and floating point numbers. And double is also very much similar to float. The only difference is that it can store larger values, like very, if you see the range over here, it is 1.7 e plus 3 into 10 power 8. So it has a storage space of 8 bytes, which is almost double that of float. So
Yeah, so we saw how variables can be declared and assigned in C, C++, and Java. We have the same way of declaration in all the three languages. But when it comes to Python, we need not explicitly mention the data type. You'll just have to assign a value to the variable, and based on the value, the variable is given the data type accordingly. So here, if you see, if you give 0 to the variable var, it will assume as int. And if you give a decimal value, then it will assume as float. We also have many other data types like tuple dictionaries, but for now, we'll just get the basics right.
Yeah, so moving on to operators, like we need something to work on with these variables and to perform some operations on these variables, we need operators. So one of them is the assignment operator. Like most of the operators are classified into the following 5 types. And the assignment operator is basically what you see in Max. It's like it assigns a value to a variable. For example, if a equal to 5, then it assigns the value 5 to the variable a. And similarly, you have arithmetic operators. You might have learned it from your KGs, and it's the same thing like plus, minus, and star stands for multiplication. And here you use a slash for division. So the only thing which many of you might not be knowing is the mod operator. Mod is nothing but it finds a remainder between two numbers. The arithmetic operators are applied for two works on two operands like a plus b and a minus b. So these are some of the examples. So if you have 5 mod 2, let's say 5 mod 2, then this operator returns the remainder of 5 which divided by 2, which gives us 1. So 5 mod 2 here results in 1. And similarly, we have relational operators. So relational operators basically compares two variables or any numbers as well. Suppose we store 3 in A and 5 in B, then A equals B returns either true or false. So relational operator is used to, always returns a Boolean value, either true or false. And not equal to is exactly the opposite of it. And you use an exclamatory mark along with an equal to sign to represent a not equal to. And it gives just the opposite result of equals. And then similarly you have greater than, less than, and similarly greater than equal to and less than equal to. All these results give a true or false value, and these are mostly used in the if condition statements, the conditional statements and all, to check whether to check a particular condition. We'll be using the relational operators. And these are the logical operators. Like logical operators, like we have and, or, and not. So and basically means like it returns true if all the operands are true. For example, let's see this one. Here you have a is 5 and b as 8. Then it actually compares through two relational outputs, and it returns true or false again. Like for example, here you have a greater than 3, which is actually true over here. And here we have b greater than 5, which equals to 8 greater than 5, which is also true. Since both these operands give the value as true, and hence and will return it as true. Similarly, if you see here, for and a greater than 3 is true, but b less than 5 will evaluate to false, and hence since one of them is false, the total expression evaluates to false. So that's and operator. And here you have or in the sense like at least one of the operands is true, then it returns true. So if you see here, both these are true, so it returns true. And here one is true and one is false, so it evaluates to true again. Only if both the operands are false, then or will evaluate to false. So similarly, you have not operator. Not basically gives the opposite of whatever is there. Like for example, here a less than 3 will give false, but if you apply a not operator over it, then it will return to true. So it's like true only if the operand is false. And like similarly, you have various other operators. You can explore more about these after the end of the session. And moving on to the input output. Haranya.
So now what if you want to get something from the user and give back to the user? So that's when we need input and output. So here, this is how you will take input and give output in C. You will have to use the function scanf. And do you guys have any idea what this percent is about? Does anyone know? If you know, please unmute and tell.
It indicates it's a number, digit.
Yes, right. So we have something called format specifiers. So they'll basically tell the scanf function what kind of data is being taken as input. So percentage D means integer. So if it is percentage F means float. If it's percentage C, then it means a character. So it goes like that. So when we input, we use scanf, and this is how you'll take. You'll have to write percentage D inside double quotes, and then you'll have to have ampersand symbol followed by the variable name. When it comes to output, you will have to use printf function, but you just have to remove the ampersand symbol. You don't need that. We'll see how it's done in C++. So for input, you'll just have to write cin greater than the variable name. Cin and cout means console input and console output. So I think this is pretty straightforward. So I guess you guys are understanding it. In input, you'll just have to give greater than symbol, but in output, you'll have to give less than symbol. In Python is basically very simple. You will just have to write the variable name, and as I told you before, you need not write the data type. So here I've defined a variable num, and here I'm defining what data type it is, followed by the function input. So whatever you give, that will be stored inside num, and output is very straightforward. You'll just have to print, and inside braces you'll have to give the variable name. All right, here in Java, it needs a bit of higher concepts, but then, yeah, see, this is the syntax. You'll have to give scanner followed by any variable that is basically called the object, but let's skip those concepts for now. So scanner and the object name equal to new scanner and system.in. New scanner, system.in, all of these are keywords. You cannot use them anywhere else. Like you cannot use them for variables. And followed by that, I'll have to say what the data type it is, followed by variable name equal to the object name dot nextint. Nextint is also another keyword. So you'll do that for all the other variables as well. For output, you'll have to do system.out.println. You can also use system.out.print. Println just gives you the output in a new line. And then inside the braces, you'll have to give the variable name.
Yeah, now we have a small game for you. So it's like known as guess the word, where the rules is like you can ask only 3 questions, and our answer will be yes or no. And there will be one final guess for the answer, and we'll also be giving you one clue as well. So
we'll show you a demo, right?
Demo, yeah.
So, yeah. So now Meenakshi would have thought of something. I'm going to ask her questions.
No, I'm thinking of a word which is a programming language. I'll give you a hint at the beginning. So I'm thinking of some language and you have to guess it correctly. But my answer would be just yes or no.
Yes, okay. Meenakshi, give me the clue.
Yeah, it's a programming language.
Yes, okay. So does it have many lines of code, or does it have many lines of code?
No.
Does it have the name of a snake?
Yes.
So is the answer Python?
Yeah, you got it. So
yes,
it's as simple as this, and we'll have a similar activity in the next slides.
All right, this is the clue. Anybody can unmute and ask your question.
You can ask a question to which they'll answer yes or no.
Does the data type have numbers in it?
Yeah.
Of any sort?
Does
yes.
it have decimal points?
Does it contain decimal points?
No.
Integer.
Is it integer?
Yeah, you got it right.
Integer.
Great, super. So moving on, we'll have another, the clue is tool. It is, you can think it of as an ID or tool or basically a software maybe.
Is there any option to add extension?
Adding extension, like what do you mean exactly?
Maybe like theme?
Yes.
or a GitHub extension? Is it VS Code?
Okay, let me tell you, this is a very familiar tool for you guys.
Flowgramming. Is it created by Amrita? Is it programming?
It's
Programming in GitHub, they hosted a website.
Programming.
No.
Algorithm.
Algorithm.
Flowgorithm.
Yeah, you're right. It's
Yeah,
Flowgorithm.
yeah.
And next we
Okay,
have a
guys,
very
I think you guys
famous.
are learning Flowgramming now, right? So we have another software called Flowgorithm, which we learned before. It is similar to Flowgramming. So yeah, people who guessed Flowgramming, you guys are also correct.
Yeah, so we used to use the tool known as Flowgorithm. It is also very much similar to it. And it's basically used to implement your algorithms and pseudocode.
Yes.
Without using any programming language. And the next one is a famous personality. You can ask me questions. And one more rule is that you shouldn't ask whether it is. You shouldn't guess the word first. First, you have to
Ask yes or no questions.
Yeah, and finally
once
you have to guess the answer.
Yes.
Is he related to science and technology?
Yeah, obviously.
Is
the
the
person created a
person who
kernel?
discovered any programming language?
One at a time, please. I couldn't.
Is he a founder?
Is the personality male or female?
I should answer only yes or no, so you can't ask is like you can ask is she a female or is he a male, but you can't
Is
ask
she a female?
Yeah.
Is he Elon Musk?
Does he start a company which named which
Is
name
it
starts with
Lady Ada
M?
Lovelace?
No.
Did he start a company named M?
No.
Guys, the previous answer was the previous question.
She, yeah.
Is she a female? That was yes.
Yes,
So
yeah.
this is a female personality that we're talking about.
It's Grace Hopper.
Sophia.
The first woman to invent a programming language.
Yes,
Yeah,
She-
correct. He's correct. Sorry, what?
My answer was yes to the person who asked,
Grace
is she
Hopper.
the no.
I think Ajay got it. Ajay, can you ask your question again?
Programmer.
Yeah.
Ada Lovelace.
Yeah,
Ada
you're right.
Lovelace.
Got it.
Right,
Great.
right.
So next we have a small comparison between the Hello World programs in C, C++, Java, and Python. So basically, when you start programming, the first program which you write is the Hello World program. And let's see how we write a Hello World program in all these 4 basic languages. So this one is C, and here you have to hash include generally means to include a header file. And here we include the header file stdio.h, which includes all the input, output, only if you include this header file, you will be able to access printf, scanf, and those things. So int main, like every program will be having a function, and main function is where a program starts its execution from. So here we use the data type int because the main function will be returning a value of an integer data type. Here we are returning return 0. So 0 is an integer data type, and hence I am having usually main functions have the data type as int. And here a printf is the keyword to print a string or anything on the output console. So this is a basic C program where you'll be writing printf and inside double quotes. So string is basically string is also a data type which is not primitive, but it is like a sequence of characters. So string is usually denoted using double quotes, and here hence we print it as string is denoted using double quotes in C, C++, and Java, whereas in Python you can use both single and double quotes. It doesn't matter. So here coming to C++, we have to include the header file IOStream. So if we compare C and C++, you can see that most of them are similar, but the difference over here is we're including the header file stdio, and here we are including IOStream. And using namespace std is actually to It's optional. Without, if you didn't include this statement, then you have to write std before all the cout and cin. So it is basically to reduce your work, which we are including it before. And cout is printing the characters in the output screen. So here also we're giving cout hello world and return 0. It's almost similar to C. And as you see here, Python is the most simplest, and it is used in it is the most used programming language in the century. And here we have to just write print, the keyword print, and within the bracket we have to give a string. Here we are giving it as hello world, and as I said, in Python we can denote a string using single quotes as well. So next is Java, and Java, here we have to create a class and objects. Maybe you'll be learning it later, but just have a gist of what it is. So I'm creating a class named main, and inside the class I'm writing the entire function where these public, static, and all are modifiers and keywords. So void main is here I'm having the data type of main function as void because I didn't return anything. So void in the sense null, which is nothing. So I'm not returning anything, and hence it is void over here. And I'm passing a string arg inside the main function. It is just a parameter. And system.out.println is, like Haranya said, this is the syntax for output in Java, and I'm giving the string hello world inside it. So moving on, over to Haranya.
All right, so coming to if else, so if it's raining, then you'll have to take an umbrella, right? So if not, then you don't have to take it. So that is how if else also works. You'll check for a condition. If it's true, something should happen. If not, something else will happen. So move to the next slide, Meenakshi. We have a small example here. So the user will give you a number. You'll have to check if the number is equal to 5 or not. The algorithm is same in all the 4 languages. So inside the if statement, you will check if num equal to 5. If it is true, then the next immediate block of statements will be executed. If it is not, then the other block of statements will be executed. So if num is equal to 5, then num is 5 will be printed. If not, then num not equal to 5 is printed. So as you can see here in C and C++, you just have the difference of taking in input and giving the output. And Python is much simpler. You just have the input statement and the condition and the output statement. And as Meenakshi told you about Java, and I also told you about the input and output in Java, right? So you'll just have to take the number in and then check the condition and just print it. The algorithm is same in all the 4 languages, only the syntax varies a bit. So move to the next slide. All right, so we have another subdivision of if else, which is if else. Now let's say you and your friends want to go out, and if it's only 2 of you, then you'll be taking a 2-wheeler. If it's 4 of you, then you take a car. And if both of these doesn't happen, probably many friends are going to join you, then you'll have to take a bigger vehicle. So that's how if else works. So you can have as many conditions as you want. You'll start with if. So here we have a program which checks if a number is 5, 6, or if it's not equal to both 5 or 6. So if num is equal to 5, then it prints num equal to 5. And you'll have to write else if and write the second condition inside the else if statement. So if it is equal to 6, then it will print 6. After if, you can have as many else if statements as you want. And finally, you will have an else statement, which will be executed if none of the previous statements were executed. So finally, the else statement, whatever is there inside the else block, that will get executed. So it is the same for C, C++, and Java. In Python alone, instead of else if, you will just have to write elif. Yes, we'll move on.
Yeah, next is like loops. Like if you want to, do a lot of statements which are mostly repetitive. For example, if you want to print, for numbers from 1 to 10, then you can't just write cout 1, cout 2, cout 3. It's more of repetitive statements. So to do all these, we have a for loop or loops which basically executes the set of statements inside it a specific number of times. So here I'm giving, this is a code for loop in C++, where I'm initializing, and so for loop has three parts actually. The first part is the initialization part, and the second one is the condition to check until when the loop has to execute, and the third one is the updation part. So updation basically updates the variable. So here we have the variable as input, and we are assigning it to 1 first. So until it is less than or equal to 10, this for loop will execute this particular statement. Here we have only one statement inside the for loop, which is a cout. So it will be printing numbers from 1 to 10, and then eventually input variable will get incremented by 1. So after this cout statement, it will go to 2, and then it will print 3, and then it goes on till 10. So similarly, we have a for loop in C, which is like mostly the same format, where instead of cout, we'll just use printf over here. And Python, it's a bit of different. We don't have these three parts. Like we have to use for and then the variable name. And you can also specify the range until which you want to print the number. So here it is from 1 and it is less than 11. So it prints print of I prints the numbers in the range of 1 till 10. Okay, so do you all remember the maze which I showed in the beginning, like where you have to write an algorithm for making the computer understand? So here what we can do is we can draw a grid, and you can grid in the form of a coordinate system, so that we can make the computer understand at which point we are pointing to. So let's frame an algorithm for this. So for this rover to reach this particular destination, it has to like turn down and then move 2 steps, and then it has to turn right and then move 3 steps to the right, and then turn down and then move 2 steps to right, and again turn right and move 3 steps. So this is basically the we're feeding the computer with these particular steps so that it understands it and executes it to get the proper output. So here's a pseudocode. Algorithm, like basically algorithm is what we are thinking about, and it's written in our own words. And pseudocode is also like an implementation of the algorithm. And later the pseudocode will be converted into a programming language. So this is how we process a problem. First thinking about a solution and then converting into a pseudocode. And then you can go on and write the program for the pseudocode. So here if you see, we are having two variables, source x and source y. So we are declaring it to 0, 0 because that's the position where the rover is. And then we are having the destination, initializing the destination position as 6, 4, where it has to reach. And then we're writing the code for it. Here, source of y, we're incrementing it by 1. And then again, y, like if you have to move down, then the y coordinate should be incremented by 1. Whereas if you want to move to the right, then the x coordinate should be incremented by 1. So it's basically first you are doing a y plus 1 and plus 1. So it goes 2 steps down, and then x 3 steps to the right, and then y again 2 steps down, and then you will reach the destination finally after moving 3 steps to the right. So this is how a pseudocode is. Let me show you. So after pseudocode, you have to code it in. I have already coded it in Python, which is almost the same what I have done over here. If you see here, is it visible or is it visible now?
Yeah, it's
okay. So I'm initializing the source x and source y to 0. Like both source x points to 0 over here and source y also points to 0 over here. And I'm printing the position of the cell, the starting source of the cell. And I'm initializing the destination to 6, 4. And so here we are using for loops, instead of writing it every time, it's kind of repetitive. So you can write it inside a for loop, and I'm running the for loop for 2 times first, where it has to move down. So source y is incremented by 1. And then for loop for 3 times to move right. So because x, when you increment x by 1, then it goes to the right. And then I'm using another for loop, which runs for 2 times. Where you are incrementing it y to y by 1, so it moves in the down direction, and similar way 3 times the right direction. So let's run this code and see. Yeah, if you see here, the cell starts from 0, 0, and then it goes on to 0, 1 and 0, 2. So you can see 0, 1 and 0, 2, and then it goes to 1, 2, 2, 2, and finally it reaches the destination 6, 4 as per the code we have given over here. So
So you
Um,
can see this process, guys. So we started, just to give you a summary, right? So we started looking at the problem. It was a maze, and then you thought how any person would solve it. You just look at it, and with your eyes, you can look at the path. Now, with that path, how would you explain to a, let's say, a blind person? Then you would go to this algorithm, which is basically a thinking of a solution, right? You say it in normal English words. Now, substitute that blind person with a computer. Now, computer does not have any context. It does not know what down means. It does not know what step means. It does not know what turn means. It just does what you tell it to do. So how do we tell what the computer what to do? We use the all the primitives which we saw till now. We saw operators. We saw variables, right? So this next slide. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, you can see that the pseudocode is basically drilling down on the algorithm where you're going to set the premise of the problem. So till now you do not have the coordinate system. Now you can see xy coordinate is there. So with that you communicate to the system that okay, now this is the reference, so this is the context. You have an xy coordinate, you are numbering the cells, and you're saying from the start, so this is the start position and this is the end position, and you're just going to increase by down. What do you mean by down? You increment y, the y coordinate. What do you mean by turn right and move 2 steps forward? You increment the x coordinate. So, it's more like mathematical or more like the general way of saying without any language context, right? So this is how you go to the pseudocode. And next we saw, Meenakshi showed you how the Python program runs. So you're just translating your logic to computer code. And that is all about programming, right? To give you a basic overview through the entire approach to programming, right? Hope you guys got a good understanding of what the process entails. Over to you, Meenakshi.
Yeah, to have a better visualization about how it works. So here is a maze, like we have created the same maze over here, and this is nothing but a path finding tool. So it actually finds the path between the source and the destination. These are the different path finding algorithms, like to find the shortest path between two nodes. Like if many of you might have wondered how Google Maps work, like how it's finding the shortest distance from a particular place where we are to the destination. So it implements various pathfinding algorithms to find the best path to choose from. So for example, I will do a start search and see it finds the best path to choose from. It's not going all over here and all. And so this is how a pathfinding algorithm works. So you can
This is like
explore more about it.
Yeah, instead of us telling the system, go right, go left, go down, go up, we are telling the system to find the path itself. But even that is done by algorithms. These algorithms are a little more powerful than the ones that we just gave. Instead of giving directly go right or go left, we are going to tell it how to go, like how to go about finding if I have to go right or go left, like how do I see which way to go. So those are all a little complex ones which you can build little by little by working on problems and practicing more and more.
Yeah, so in the previous, when we executed the Python program and showed you, you could see we had, we just had loops, the basic primitives which we taught you today. We just had loops, we had increments. So that is directly telling the computer, hard coding, we call it hard coding. Like you directly tell the computer what to do. And you saw the output also, it was, we could just see the points through which it goes through the print statement. So this is like the next level. After you understood the basics, you can start exploring algorithms as Meenakshi rightly said, right? Google Maps, how does it find the shortest path? So you need some robust algorithm. Each time for some source and destination on Google Maps, you cannot say, go up this much side, this much steps, go right this much steps, these many steps. So that is not feasible, right? So the next level is these algorithms that automate this process. In order to implement these algorithms, you first need to know the basics which we talked about, and also the visualization part. So you saw previously we could just print out the points. Now using some other languages like JavaScript and visualization frameworks, you are able to visualize this particular path that you can see on the grid, right?
Yeah, this right now is a website. So we have done it using, this is done using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript alone. So that we'll also deal with web development when it comes to Web Development 101 as part of the CS Awareness Week. But yeah, you've got a lot to explore, and this is just the starting point for you.
Yeah, over to Meenakshi.
Yeah. So here are some few of the websites where you can practice and learn from. I'll be sending you the links. So Geeks for
Yeah,
Geeks
we'll
and
share the
W3
entire
schools.
PPT itself.
Yeah, fine. So Geeks for Geeks W3 schools are mostly used for learning computers and technical stuffs. And HackerRank and HackerYearth is where you can learn new languages and practice more. So we are also conducting the contest in HackerRank only. And Tutorials Point also has various resources which will help in building your computer science fundamentals and all. And competitive programming is actually, it also involves programming, but it is a mind sport where you'll be given a problem and you have to solve it within a particular time. And it also depends on how fast you solve and how optimal your answer is. For example, if you see, using the for loops, we can generate sum of numbers from 1 to 10. But in the most optimal way is to use the formula. We have a formula for sum of numbers, right? N into n plus 1 by 2. So that's how like competitive programming works. You have to optimize your algorithm further. There are various approaches to solve a problem, and you have to find the best approach which is faster as well as uses less storage space. So you can try a lot of Codeforces and CodeChef are two of the main competitive programming websites where you can practice, and it's just like solving puzzles. So you can give it a try, and you can also increase your problem solving skills, thinking ability, and it will be very much useful for you in interviews and clearing your. It would be very useful in the placement times. So we'll be sending you the links, and now we have a contest which starts in half an hour.
Sorry, actually, we have the contest at 8:30. We got a lot of requests from students asking to postpone a little bit. So we initially told 7:30. Students were finding it difficult to create the accounts and they also want to take a bit rest. So we've postponed it to 8:30.
Yeah,
yeah, it's the same link. I'll just post it again. If you haven't already signed up, please do sign up. The contest starts at 8:30. That's the revised time. We can open the floor for Q&A.
Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask right now.
So any questions that you may have? So recently, we've just told some links about competitive programming, right? Like, don't worry, we can have some detailed sessions about those as well in later on. And if you have any doubts, you can ask. Sorry, someone had it.
Yeah, it will be easier more if you explain comparing with logarithm, because the one who have zero knowledge in these things, they may be finding it logarithm easy.
Yeah, so if you look at this logarithm, right, it was integer n1, n2 input, sum n1 plus n2. If you go to that slide of pseudocode, I think it's the same thing, right? Can you go to the slide of pseudocode? We've just not put it in the same format. But if you have a look at this pseudocode slide.
See here, main is actually declaring the function. So here you have a main which is translated in C++ to int main, and you have open and close brackets, and then you will be writing the entire program inside curly braces. So end also indicates the close of this curly brace. And here integer n1, n2 sum is basically declaring the variables. So here you might have seen how we declare a variable.
Yeah, actually, shall we just translate that logarithm right now?
Yeah,
we
great.
can put it in a new slide and translate.
Or I'll just write the code for it over here.
I mean, just to have the picture side by side, we can do it on the PPT and then come here.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So first, like, let me start with C++, where and first of all, for all the C++ and C and all, you have to add an header file, like
So these are like some fixed things that you need to have in your code, right? So a header file is basically, so you say int main. So how does the computer know what is int, what is main? You need to have some definitions for what is int and what is main. Computer understands only zeros and ones. We know that, right? So it is just current flowing through the wires in the computer. It knows high voltage 1 and low voltage 0. So everything you write needs to be converted to that machine binary code of zeros and ones. So the int you write here, it needs to have some definition that somehow maps to zeros and ones. And you have all these things like compilers, interpreters, assemblers, linkers, like in the process of translating what you are writing right now in English to that zeros and ones. So in that, why I said is because you write int. So the definition for int needs to be there. That is in this hash include IOStream. IOStream is called a library in which you have the definition for the basic keywords and things that you use for the normal programming. So that is why the first line of hash include IOStream is there. For Python, you don't have such things because for Python, like in the language itself, they have the inbuilt libraries that are required for the normal execution. And for other things, like if you want to use some square root function or something, you would have to include. So here, if you do hash include math, then you can get the math functions like that.
So include is basically used to get the header files and import packages in your program to use the keywords present inside those packages. And here I'm using this namespace std because to access the to refer to the cout and scene consoles. So int main, basically here you can see this violet color oval and end also. So this is basically a translation of that. And here we have integer n1, n2 and nsum. I'll be declaring the same over here. Where we have the for the integer data type, we have the keyword int, and we have to declare the numbers in the same way. And I should be ending all the statements in C++ with a semicolon except the for loops and while loops and if statements. So here I am getting the input as n.
So N1 and N2.
I have a doubt.
Yeah, go on.
We have in Python, code seems easier to understand. So are there cases like where we still use Java or C++ over Python?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes.
Yeah. So Python, you yourself told it's easy to understand. If it's easy to understand, what does it mean? It's closer to us than it is to the computer, right? The distance of that language, by distance I mean the amount of time and complexity that is involved in translating that code to zeros and ones is more. Because if you can easily understand it, then obviously the computer cannot easily understand it. So in cases of high performance, where there is high performance required, like operating system, if you're on your Windows machine or if you're on your Linux machine, the kernels are actually written in C and C++ languages, right? So in that case, it's performance intensive. In that case, if you use Python, then when you open a folder or something, right, it's going to take more time than it takes for a C code to execute and do the same task. So you have places where you prefer one language over the other based on some metrics like performance, time it takes for execution, and things like that.
Yeah, it's best to have basic knowledge about all the programming basic the common programming languages, but you can proceed with whichever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
You can work on more whichever you feel comfortable with, but it's best to have know the basics of all. And
on a
here,
side note, right, for guys, you guys who are learning programming just now, Python seems easy. You can just quickly learn it and do it, but you won't know exactly what is happening underneath the exact implementation, right? You will just say x is equal to 1, y is equal to 2, x plus y. That's all. You'll get 3. But if you're going to do the same thing here, like how Meenakshi is doing, you need all these lines of code. So when you are learning, if you get to this level of the language, right, you will exactly know what is going to happen underneath. So after you write your Python code, how it gets translated? This is like one step below Python, right? So it will be helpful for you in understanding the background of what happens when you write code.
So this is a translation from Flowgorithm to C++ code, where I have declare the main function, and this rectangular box denotes this particular thing where we declare the variables, and here the parallelogram denotes the getting input from the user, and this is assignment statement where I'm adding n1 and n2 and assigning its value inside the variable sum. And this particular parallelogram where we output the sum denotes this one where we are printing this value inside sum on the output screen, and return 0 should redirect to just it denotes the end of the function, like main denotes the start of the function, and hence I'm to come out of the main function I'm returning 0. So Aditi, I'm sorry to interrupt, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I just had something to add on to the question asked. So you say there are a lot of programming languages. Just going on back to the analogy of normal languages. So say you're in Tamil Nadu, people do speak English, but the main language is Tamil, right? So it would be easier to communicate with people in Tamil than to say communicate in Telugu or in Malayalam in Tamil Nadu. So that is the same case with many of the domains of computer science. When you go to web development, it would be easier for you to communicate with the computer in JavaScript than with, say, C++ or something. So it just depends on each domain. It doesn't mean that you have to learn everything right now, but as and when you go to a programming language, you can learn it and then move on. Unlike our Indian languages, which are very different from each other, all these programming languages are very similar. So once you learn, say, one language, it would be very easy for you to keep on adding other programming languages to your arsenal because the syntax would be highly similar. And even if you don't know the syntax, you always have Google. You can just go ahead and search how to do loops in, say, Scala, or how to do loops in C hash, and you're going to get the code for it. So you don't have to worry a lot about how to get started with learning a programming language. So I would say just learn one or two programming languages for now, and try to think and implement solutions using that language. And after that, learning one another and each other would be very simple, and you'll be able to do it really fast.
Yeah, so do you want me to show the same in Python as well? The translation from Flogorithm to Python.
Yeah, they'll see how easy it is for that same example.
Yeah, great. So first, just we have to.
Yeah, just keep it. I mean, have a new text box on the side. So
Yeah, okay.
You can add the language name also if you want.
So in Python, you just need to need not declare any variables and all, just get the input n1 as Haranya has already discussed about the input and output in Python. Just have to get the input like this and print num. So and similar way for n2 also, I'm getting it as. And find the sum and store it over there. You need not end it with a semicolon. It's just n1 plus n2. And finally, I will be printing the sum. As simple as that.
Yeah, and you can note that we don't have a header file here because for the normal execution, Python already has it as an inbuilt one.
Any more questions?